Hello and welcome to our IBM security session on using security risk quantification to empower better business decision making. My name is Julian Merrick. I'm the Managing Partner for Security Strategy, Risk and Compliance here at IBM Security. I'm delighted to be joined today by my friend and colleague Bob Kalka, our Vice President of IBM Security, who's responsible for our technical professionals, for strategic client initiatives like security risk quantification, and for our enablement programs. Today, we'll be discussing how IBM Security helps our clients factor security risk into decision-making by leveraging risk quantification. We'll show how we can apply risk quantification across a broad portfolio of our products and services to really empower our clients' decision-making. So how can we build a risk program which incorporates multiple data sources and threat intelligence? For many years, as security professionals, we've said that security should be a business conversation. Business leaders and their security teams need to be on the same page when it comes to security risk in order to effectively protect their people, their data, and their valuable resources. Security risk quantification using the FAIR model allows us to translate security risks into a common language for both business leaders and security teams in terms of pound sterling in the UK, euros and dollars. Our feedback from our CISO clients is that this is exactly what they need, but also that they cannot just go into their boardroom and tell them that everything they've been presenting for the last couple of years was wrong. They need our help to take them on this journey. So Bob, what have you heard from our many clients in your discussions?
Well, Julian, what you said a moment ago is dead on, is that there's a lot of business decisions being made. And when we talk to business people about cybersecurity and risk, the conversations have generally been subjective around risk. And business people don't like that, right? Business people want objective data. And so that's really kind of the core topic that we're going to talk about today, is how we transform that into an objective discussion.
Absolutely. So what we want to talk about is the many use cases for risk quantification. Our approach to risk quantification is use case based. Right now, most of our clients are on a digital transformation journey, and they're uncovering new risks. These risks are evidence of the complexity of the new digital environment. So first of all, mapping the secure journey to cloud. Companies have gradually been moving to the cloud for years, but a recent report by Flexera revealed that 59% of businesses surveyed plan on increasing their spending on cloud services as a result of the pandemic. A risk quantification assessment can really help organizations distinguish which workloads to move to the cloud and how, while also recommending the proper security controls to put in place based on a cost-benefit impact analysis. Next, let's talk about mergers and acquisitions. As the global mergers and acquisition volumes are projected to amount to 2.1 trillion in 2020, it's important that organizations venturing into mergers and acquisition transactions incorporate cyber risk assessment into their due diligence process to verify the valuation of a deal. CISOs tell me that often they only find out about the acquisitions when it's announced to the street. And a recent IBM Institute for Business Value study found that of surveyed businesses that had recently executed a major M&A transaction, 57% performed a cybersecurity assessment only after due diligence was complete. In fact, 1 in 3 respondents experienced a breach that can be directly attributed to mergers and acquisition activity during integration. Quantifying this potential exposure not only helps organizations proactively mitigate security risks before they turn into active threats, but it also enables them to assess the issues that might impact the target company's value. And thirdly, let's talk about zero trust, enabling a zero trust remote work model. Again, a recent study conducted by Morning Consult and sponsored by IBM found that 61% of surveyed employees new to working from home are using their personal computers and stated they haven't been provided with the tools they need to properly secure their devices. Now, Needing to protect the wider, more diverse environments, organizations need to proactively operate under the assumption of potential compromise, so they can take a zero trust approach to security. By defining what poses risk to their business and quantifying the potential impact from third-party tools or applications to access controls, organizations are able to understand which risks they need to prioritize in mitigating. In other words, assessing security risks, contextualizing them, and calculating their business impact with FAIR can help enable organizations to enforce their zero trust model and strengthen their cybersecurity resilience as work models adapt to this rapidly evolving business landscape. Now, the challenge with each of these use cases is how do we build a risk quantification program that takes into account all of the many security data sources available today? Now, that's what we want to describe to you today. So, Bob, let's dive into our vision of how to leverage the multiple security data sources when applying the FAIR model in order to quantify security risk at an enterprise level.
Indeed, and thank you so much, Julian. So look, team, in the 26 of my 31 years at IBM that I've been focused on helping to build our cybersecurity business from being really a nothing to now being the world's largest cybersecurity business and over $3 billion business. I flew over 10 million miles meeting with clients every day, every week. I've met with thousands of clients personally, right up till early March when we had the shutdown, and I'm on WebExes and Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams meetings with clients every single day talking about this stuff. And what I'm going to share with you is what I'm hearing from them, because there's a profound transformation that almost every organization has been pursuing, whether or not they realized it or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and draw for you. The transformation that we see these organizations go through is what a lot of people would call a security strategy transformation. But what that actual strategy transformation means is very simple. The reason why cybersecurity exists is it is a form of risk management. That's why cybersecurity exists. It's just another form of risk management. However, in the thousands of clients that I've personally worked with, the vast majority of organizations that we walk into have cyber programs that are not really oriented around risk. They're actually oriented around compliance. Now, what's the difference? A compliance-based security program is like a checkbox security program. You have an auditor that comes in, they find 13 things that need to be fixed. Let's say one of those things is a certain kind of tool to do security analytics. It's become a standard. And so what happens is the organization is focused on how do we check all of those boxes before the auditor comes back. Now, obviously, that's a good thing to do, but what we've seen is it leads to underdeployed security controls and technologies, because what happens is once you check the box that you have the tool, you go, okay, it'll take care of the auditor. But everybody that uses cybersecurity tools know that you have to tune those tools over months around the risks to the organization. So if all you're doing is putting in tool and mildly tuning them, then you've essentially underdeployed the tools and they're not really doing risk management. And in fact, I like to playfully share with most of the CISOs that I meet that you have a choice. You can do risk management or career management, I like to playfully say. Because if you check all the boxes, you're going to pass the next audit, but that doesn't mean you're doing risk management, which is ultimately why we're here, right? So the idea is, how do we help organizations make that transformation? And as we've become a $3 billion business, one of our primary businesses is helping clients actually do that. Now, so we've built some best practices of how do you make that transformation actually take place. And if you look at what those best practices look like, that's where the need for risk quantification becomes just profoundly obvious, right? So the best practice that we've seen over the years is that there's basically 5 major steps in the transformation from a compliance-based program to a risk-based program. First is you have to prioritize the business risks, of course, because if you're going to make risk-based decisions, you need to know which risks you're most focused on and what priority order, et cetera. Then what you do is then you translate those business risks into what framework of risk management controls are you going to use to implement the proper controls and compensating controls to address those prioritized business risks. And I don't mean, ISO or COBIT or NIST or whatever. I mean, what subset of those controls? Because nobody can handle every control at once. So what are the prioritized controls that address those business risks? Okay. Once you've done that, then what you do is a maturity gap analysis of each of those controls. Where do you need to be in order to properly, provide that level of risk management versus where are you today? You then prioritize those gaps, and then you build your cyber plan based on that. That's how you do this. That's the best practice of how you make that transformation. However, from thousands of clients, tens of thousands of clients actually we've worked with here, the issue is that this process today is based on subjective analysis. What are the prioritized business risks? What generates the most cost pressure, cost analysis, cost mitigation for us? Okay? This entire process is based on subjective analysis. So just as we want to get from a compliance-based program to a risk-based program, we want to get from subjective to objective analysis. And that is what risk quantification is all about, which is why we are one of the pioneers in getting all over this space, because we're seeing it everywhere, okay? So what I want to do is share with you our observation that once you start to make this switch and start to get more objective, I want to show you the two areas of the business that it generally has the most impact on from a cyber point of view. It impacts how do you manage threats across your organization, and it also then affects how you then protect the organization around you, leveraging what you're doing for threat management. Okay, so it's very easy to observe once you look at this at scale, how most organizations both manage threats and protect the business. On the managed threat side, I'd observe to you that every shop we walk into, if you look at how they run their security shop, has three phases. And those three phases, I'm going to use the very simple terms for them here, is you need to find the needles in the haystack. You put security analytics in to find things that look suspicious. Secondly, you then confirm that each needle is sharp enough to take action on. Welcome to risk management. The vast majority of organizations, as I'll show you in a moment, do this incredibly subjectively and grossly inefficiently. But confirming that each needle in the haystack actually needs an action is a huge step, and something that risk quantification just makes a no-brainer relatively to how people are doing it today. And then once you're able to confirm that something that looks suspicious is in fact a problem for you, that you then need to go fix what you find. Well, if you look at how most organizations do that today, it really comes out why this is so needed. First of all, how do we find needles in the haystack? What most organizations do is they start by collecting, normalizing, correlating, reporting, and monitoring on logs, right? The technology to do that is typically called SIEM, or Security Information Event Management. And it's great stuff. You have to have it. It's a baseline thing everybody's expected to do. But what's very concerning to us is in a lot of shops, when we say, what is your security analytics program? It begins and ends with this, with logs. And the problem with that, of course, is that logs are things that have already happened, right? It may be 20 milliseconds ago or 3 weeks ago, but it's already happened. How do you do real-time analysis to figure out that a contractor who generally downloads 3 sensitive documents a week is currently downloading 300 sensitive documents? So organizations, as they mature, realize that we have to go beyond logs to also look at network flow analytics, and then even into user behavior analytics. And yet, as I said, the vast majority of organizations we work with are kind of stuck towards the bottom there, right? So they're not getting as much visibility into the needles in the haystack as they should be. Then how do we confirm? How do we actually confirm that the needle is sharp enough? Well, we did an analysis of level 1 security operations center analysts a couple of years ago and discovered that the most prevalent practice everywhere to figure out, do we really need to take action on this, is this radical technique called manual web search. Right? And the level 1 SOC analysts become experts at doing these really ingrained searches to go out and look at all the threat intelligence on the web to determine whether that potential indicator of compromise is something they need to take action on. Well, not only is it a manual effort, so it's slow, but our researchers, our X-Force research team shared with me that roughly only 20% of the world's threat intelligence is indexed and searchable. So the most common practice today is to manually search through 20% of the data. So the way to do this far better is to leverage one of the great technology accelerators for cyber out there, which is AI. Because AI engines can ingest, if you teach them, can ingest, digest threat intelligence, not only the stuff that's publicly available, also the stuff, right, across any part of the web, and allow you to have a substantial, radical impact. And I'll say more about that in a moment. And then finally, once you get to how do you fix what you find, you would think in this day and age, organizations will make a top priority the ability to make sure that if a certain type of cyber attack happens, that here's what we're going to do, here's who needs to do what in what order. The latest study I saw is 74% of organizations do not have that. Meaning that when they have a cyber attack, then the way that they figure out who should do what in what order is they make it up as they go. I'm not exaggerating. We see this everywhere. And it doesn't take a social psychologist to point out to you that when everybody's running around trying to figure out what actually happened and pointing fingers at each other, that's the worst time to figure out a collaborative integration plan for responding to a cyber attack. So I was a math minor in college, so I'll write a null set. Most organizations make it up as they go. The way to improve this is not only define, but automate the incident response playbooks and stuff. And this is where you get that trendy term SOAR these days, right? Of security orchestration and response. Right? So that's how organizations handle managing threats. And you notice what a core element that's needed there. To make that decision on, can I in fact confirm that I need to take action? That's where risk quantification is gold. And nobody is doing that today. When we start seeing clients doing that, all of a sudden it makes empirical a topic which was just dark arts or something. They just had to figure it out as they went. So that's managing threats, and that's how the security team operates. Now, the way we do that, by the way, we're well known as the leader in this space, and actually both the spaces that I'm going to talk about here. So first of all, our QRadar platform handles everything in that fine bubble, right? Logs, flows, user behavior analytics, forensics, far beyond that. Our QRadar platform, which if you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrants, all the way up in the leadership quadrant, QRadar is our platform there. For AI, we have taught Watson over the last 4.5 years to ingest and digest threat intelligence. So we now have a subscription-based service that works with QRadar, that when QRadar finds an indicator of compromise, gives it to Watson, and in many cases, in 4 to 5 seconds, Watson comes back and says, 98% odds, here's what you have. And here's the 17 sources I used to come to that conclusion. Because remember, it's already read them. It's sitting there and just wants you to ask it. And if you want, click on them and read them. We've got clients on Wall Street that have told us that their threat investigations with this Watson capability are 60 times faster than they used to be. 60x, that's their number. Okay, radical difference. And then finally, around automating, not only defining, but automating your runbooks to implement SOAR, we have our Resilient acquisition we made a couple of years ago that's well regarded as the leader in this space. Okay, so that's managing threat side. And risk quantifications helps you do that in an objective way, not a subjective way. Now, on the other side is how do you then protect the business around you? Now, this is the source of probably the most intense discussions that we have with clients these days, because everybody has realized as soon as you start your digital transformation and you start storing sensitive data in the cloud or multiple clouds, right? You run into the simple reality that the perimeter you need to worry about from a cyber point of view is no longer just the network. The perimeter you need to worry about is anywhere and everywhere your sensitive data is now. Once again, the new perimeter is anywhere and everywhere your sensitive data is. And I just saw a study a couple of weeks ago that claims that only 7%, and yes, I mean singularly, number 7% of organizations are confident they know where all their sensitive data is in the cloud. Right? Well, if you can't see it, you can't secure it, as my friend Emma Smith, the CISO for Vodafone, has said to me before. And so that has led to a massive explosion in the interest in the zero trust model, as Julian was referring to, because zero trust says, look, if you have to figure out how do you make sure you don't trust anyone, right? You need to trust and verify, then the zero trust model is the way to go. And I'm going to humanize that model for you because we're working with a lot of clients on the zero trust model. And I'd assert to you that the way to articulate the zero trust model in a way, once again, that mere mortals can actually understand it, is through a process that we've learned with our clients, which what zero trust really means is how do you make sure that only the right users can get only the right access to only the right data for only the right reason. That's what we've discovered. That's really what zero trust is. Putting in the necessary controls to ensure that only the right user can get only the right access to only the right data for only the right reason. And as we've worked with clients on this, we've learned that there's about a dozen risk management controls that really pop to the top, that you can always see those controls getting a lot of attention when you're implementing zero trust models. Around users and access, this is things like identity governance, identity analytics, very hot right now, and even hotter, adaptive authentication, where you do step up, step down, maybe even all the way to frictionless authentication, right? Based on the risk model. And risk quantification allows you to be far more objective in how you make those decisions, right? So that whole idea is around identity and access management. And for us at IBM, that is our Verify portfolio of identity and access management solutions. That's for users and access. Then when we get to data, the controls that pop to the top here that are always getting attention on zero trust type initiatives is encryption, of course, key management, of course, right? Within the cloud vendors, are you doing bring your own key? Have you graduated to advances in key management, such as keep your own keys, as we at IBM have built into the IBM public cloud, right? Even keep your own key capability. So key management, data and file activity monitoring, discovering classification to even find the data in the first place. And the center of the universe for us around this is our Guardium portfolio, which for 13 years now has been the leader in that entire space of data file activity monitoring, encryption, and things like that. And then finally, really intriguing, a lot of people, if you talk about zero trust, will not bring up this final piece of making sure that people are accessing data for the right reason. It requires you to look at how are people using data over long periods of time and detecting, potentially fraudulent use, a form of a needle in a haystack. And so we've actually just come out with a new solution called Guardium Insights, which allows us to look at very long periods of data, of the usage of the data to identify potential problems. And we also have some of our fraud detection with our Trusteer acquisition, as well as configuration management of devices and stuff with our Mass 360. But all of that works together to essentially build this zero trust model, okay? So where risk quantification helps, first of all, it helps you much better confirm that the needles in the haystack really need action because you can actually quantify the risk you're looking at. And then as you're protecting the business through the zero trust model, it allows you to figure out, where do I properly apply my identity, access, and data security controls and make decisions based on that. Now, the final thing I want to share with you is that I would be remiss in not pointing out that there's an even bigger tidal wave headed our way as security professionals. And that is the fact that as the organizations around us are modernizing through digital transformation, how do we as cyber professionals, as we're embarking on a more object risk quantification based way of operating, how do we at the same time support the modernization efforts of the organizations around us? At the same time, we modernize how we're delivering those capabilities. Because we figured out about 3 years ago that just continuing to build more and more products and integrate it with more and more places, when you think about hybrid multi-cloud, is the physics are impossible. You have to modernize the way you deliver security capabilities. So we started looking at that about 3 years ago. And what we realized immediately is the way people do threat management here was missing a step. In a cloud-based, digitally transformed environment, there's a missing step, and it is called federation. What does that mean? Well, there's a fantasy that cyber professionals have, and I share it. We've had it for decades, that the secret to finding needles in the haystack is you just get all of your log sources and flow sources and everything else, including potentially even OT feeds, right, from IoT devices and stuff, into your core analytics engine. What you find when you go hybrid multi-cloud is there's no possible way to get everything into one place. And so this federated is a federated search and investigation that says, not only do I want to check my core analytics platform, but I want to go out to the public cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, to their security mechanisms. I want to go out to other tools, things like Splunk and Guardium and Carbon Black. And when I'm looking for indicators of compromise, I want to look in all those places and come to a federated conclusion on what I'm seeing. That's, from a physics point of view, pragmatic in a hybrid multi-cloud environment. And so we are first to market with this. We wrote it as cloud native code on top of Red Hat OpenShift. And the way that we deliver that to you is that we've packaged that up with our ability to then fix what you find. And we call that our Cloud Pak for security. And what you'll see from us over time is that this is essentially a cloud-based microservices framework for delivering security functionality. So over time, as the organization around you is digitally transforming, you can provide a digitally transformed way that is far more flexible. And it's probably obvious to you where the risk quantification comes in here, because as you're deciding what capabilities do I apply, you're going to want risk quantification to decide, well, what are the assets, the data, the users, et cetera, that I want to spend most of my time on. Okay, so that's kind of our perspective on this. Once again, is to help go from a compliance-based approach to security to a risk-based approach without being subjective. That's why risk quantification is a no-brainer now. And the way you apply that is how you apply threat management within an organization that is modernizing. At the same time, you protect the business through the zero trust model. Risk quantification makes all of this far more objective, and that's what we're looking for. So Julian, I'll turn it back to you.
So thank you, Bob, and thank you for explaining the opportunity that we now have to bring all this data together. For an enterprise CISO now has access to huge quantities of security data, but actually, how do we integrate that data together into a risk quantified picture? So as Bob described, we bring a lot of capability to the table here. One of the things we bring is a lot of our own data. So the X-Force threat intelligence platforms give us the opportunity to share threat intelligence data to assist our clients in understanding the threats that they're facing. But we can also assist in bringing in third-party data from security awareness programs, third-party risk programs, from privileged access management, IAM, from the SOC, as Bob's described, from cloud service providers, and bring that all into a richer security risk management program. Now, as part of the Open Cybersecurity Alliance, we're also working to make it easier to integrate together these data sources, both the products that Bob talked about, but also the kinds of products and sources that I've just talked about. And that's really working to improve out of the box with technology standards and procedures that are common across the Open Cybersecurity Alliance members. Now, on this journey to a risk quantification, we've chosen to partner with RiskLens. This partnership that is essentially combines RiskLens's quantitative cybersecurity risk management platform with our enterprise scale security products that Bob's just described, our services, including our threat hunters. RiskLens gives us a partner with a SaaS platform built on the FAIR methodology, which means we can deliver enterprise scale risk quantification programs. Now we're coming to the end of our session, but I wanted to leave you with some final thoughts. In order to embrace digital transformation, businesses need to have confidence that these changes, these new services, these new collaborative business approaches, these new cloud platforms are all implemented securely. This is a significant challenge, and one that requires clear understanding of what's at stake if security isn't implemented. Security risk quantification provides that clarity, paving the way for the organization to tackle the security strategies needed to actually protect themselves. IBM Security can establish the necessary business context for risk quantification, leveraging the breadth and depth of our security product portfolio and our consulting services, including our expertise and insights gleaned from responding to security incidents around the globe, our unparalleled threat visibility from the X-Force threat intelligence, and our mature understanding of client landscapes. Thank you very much for your time and for spending your time with us. We'd be delighted to discuss in more detail how we can apply our expertise to your own risk quantification journey.